For a jury? All right, Mr. Mullins, go get the jury. You may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Was everybody able to follow my instructions and admonitions over the break?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Rickers, next witness.
Dr. White.
Raise your right hand for me. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you will give in these proceedings will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
You may be seated. Sit up close and speak loudly.
Good morning, Dr. White. Could you please tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury your full name and your professional address?
Yes. My name is Dr. John E. White. My main practice address is Suite 724. The address is 723 Auburn Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio, and I practice at Mount Auburn OBGYN Associates, Incorporated.
You also have an office in Warren County, too?
We have an office in Mason, Ohio at 608 Reading Road.
Doctor, you're a medical doctor, is that correct?
That is correct.
What's the nature of your specialty?
Obstetrics and gynecology.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury a little bit about your educational background?
Yes, I did my undergraduate, my medical school education and residency all at the University of Kentucky in Lexington, Kentucky. I graduated from medical school in 1984, and I finished my residency in 1988, and I'm from the Cincinnati area, and I moved back home to practice obstetrics and gynecology in Cincinnati in July of 1988.
And you are currently licensed to practice in the state of Ohio?
That is correct.
And since when were you licensed to start practicing in Ohio?
Well, I made sure I had my license in force when I started practicing in July of '88. So I have been licensed since July of 1988.
And are you board certified?
Yes, and the board is the American Board of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. That's the board for our specialty.
And what does that mean to be board certified?
Well, what it means is that you've distributed competence and a level of ability and education that the American Board requires to allow you to practice obstetrics and gynecology. And it used to be a two-step process. You used to have to practice your written boards before you began practice and passed those. And then after being out in practice for 2.5 years, you had to go to Chicago and take an oral exam to pass your oral boards to continue to be board certified. And then in 2000, they decided to require you to be recertified every 6 years. And then in about 2012, they changed it, and I have to be recertified every year by continuing medical education and taking exams and that type of thing online at home. So I've kept my board certification up since then.
Are you affiliated with any hospitals?
I have privileges right now at the Christ Hospital in Cincinnati. Over the years, I used to have privileges at Bethesda and Bethesda North, but I decided to, just because of the driving back and forth with I-71, decided that was too stressful, so I limit my practice to Christ Hospital in Cincinnati. I have retained courtesy privileges at the university just in case we have a preterm delivery. Excuse me. We help educate the UC residents at Christ Hospital in OBGYN, but I really haven't done any work there. So for the most part, 100% of my professional practice activities is at my offices and at Christ Hospital downtown.
When you say the traffic on I-71, just so that the jury understands, they heard that you have a practice or an office in Mason.
Yeah, it was mainly emergencies, delivering babies in the middle of the night, but I do drive up to the Mason office at least once a week to see patients.
And your actual home is in northern Kentucky.
Yeah, I live in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky.
Have you served on any medical boards?
Well, now are you talking about work-related or outside of work?
Work-related and or outside, as long as it's a medical board.
Well, at work, I've been chairman on numerous committees throughout the years, and I served as a review committee for malpractice suits with a medical malpractice company, Pro Assurance, and then outside of work, but still in my profession, I served as board chair for the New Hope Center, which is a Christian-based nonprofit pregnancy crisis center in northern Kentucky.
Are you a member of any professional associations or organizations?
A member of American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, commonly called ACOG.
Have you testified previously in any case as an expert?
Yes, I have. I've
How many times?
deposition and trial total probably about 15.
And what type of cases were you involved in?
Those were all medical malpractice civil suits.
And were you testifying primarily for the defendant doctors?
Yeah, the vast majority of them have been defending the physicians. I've probably reviewed about 60 cases. Over 90% have been for the defense, but I have reviewed probably 5 to 10% for plaintiffs. And I've also reviewed some cases for the U.S. federal government downtown where physicians either employed by the military or somehow connected to the federal government have been sued.
And you're, I assume, testifying on behalf of the physicians being sued?
On those federal government suits, I've been, yes, asked to review cases and give my expertise on cases that their physicians have been sued.
Have you ever testified before in a criminal case?
No, I have not.
And have you always been qualified when called upon as an expert in your field?
Yes.
May I have his May I approach, Your Honor? Dr. White, I'm going to hand you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit A, B, and AA2. You just look at those very briefly for me, please.
Okay.
You've had a chance to look at them, and just briefly for the jury so they understand what they are, what are these three documents?
Excuse me. The first one is my opinion, my report dated February 7th, and then the second one is a supplemental report dated March 28th that I prepared after I reviewed some supplemental items, and then the third was my curriculum vitae.
Thank you. Now, doctor, in your practice, can you describe what you do as an obstetrician gynecologist?
Well, we, from the obstetrical standpoint, we follow patients before they're pregnant, and then when they get pregnant, we confirm their pregnancy, and then we provide prenatal care, and then we deliver their babies, and then provide the postpartum care afterwards. Pretty much all-inclusive, and we address medical issues that come up along the way, and we are trained to manage some of them, and some of them we need to consult out. But we're full care of the pregnant patients. From the gynecology standpoint, it's really from about ages 18 through 85. We provide well care to women, and also specifically for gynecologic issues and breast issues over the years of their life.
Doctor, approximately how many babies have you and your group delivered in the last 30 years?
Well, I am a person, I never exactly kept track. Some doctors have kept track of every delivery. I haven't. To estimate, I would say in my private practice, which is again since July of '88, 31 years, averaging 150 to 175 a year, so that's close to 5,000. I've always been in a fairly large group, and we've delivered about 800 to 1,000 a year, so I've cared for probably about 30,000 in that time frame.
And when you say large group, you're talking about
5 or 6 OBs at share call.
Approximately how many babies have you delivered that were stillborn?
Probably in 31 years of private practice, I would roughly say about 100.
Doctor, is intrauterine growth restriction a condition that affects expectant mothers?
Yes, intrauterine growth restriction, or what we call IUGR, is something we are always watchful for and screen for in all of our patients. It affects 10% of all pregnancies and is a leading cause of what we call perinatal, which means before birth and after birth, morbidity, which means bad outcomes, and mortality, which means death. So it's one of the big things we follow the pregnant patient for.
How is growth restriction discovered in your practice?
Well, when you, again, you're seeing your patients every 4 weeks early in the pregnancy, every 2 weeks after 32 weeks, and weekly after 36. And as part of the normal exam, you're screening for risk factors, you're weighing them every time they come in, you're taking their blood pressure, you're assessing their overall health, and then in every patient, you examine the patient, and in every patient after 24 weeks pregnant, you measure what is called a fundal height with a tape measure, and you measure the fundal height in centimeters, and we do that at every visit, and a fundal height lag is indicative of that they may be having a problem with IUGR.
And I take it that when you're measuring your patients, almost all the time, you have some idea of when conception occurred. Is that correct?
The most important thing that obstetricians actually do at the initial visit, I would say it's twofold. Number one, confirm that indeed they are pregnant. I'll give you 3. Number 2, make sure the pregnancy is in the uterus and not in the fallopian tube or an ectopic. And number 3, estimate their gestational age. Because it's the gestational age, which means then calculating their due date, that all your other decisions will be predicated on. So the first thing we do when we see the patient is we ask when their first day of their last menstrual period. Some know, a lot won't know. And when I used to teach the residents, I said, ask every single patient when the first date of their last menstrual period is, then ignore them and get an ultrasound and figure out how far along they are so that we can calculate the due date.
And part of that is also using the fundal height measurement.
Well, early on, in the first trimester, it's by ultrasound exam and pelvic exam. And then the fundal height measurement for growth is done beginning 24 weeks of pregnancy.
Thank you. And Dr. White, you're here today to give us your opinions based on your review of records, reports, interrogation transcripts, and interrogation tapes, Skylar's OB records, and the like. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And Doctor, before we get into the basis of your opinion, based on your education, experience, and background, do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty as to whether Skylar Richardson gave birth to a stillborn on May 7th?
Yes.
And what is that opinion?
That indeed, early in the morning on May 7th, at home in her bathroom alone, she delivered a stillbirth infant in the bathroom, in the toilet, at approximately 3 a.m.
And Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what you're basing that opinion upon? What did you review to come to that?
Well, I reviewed my opinion on numerous records I got that go back even to Skylar's children's hospital care, where she was being treated in the adolescent medicine clinic for her eating disorder. I also reviewed her high school and middle school records, looking for a health history, and the health history would include psychiatric disorders like anorexia, bulimia, and other eating disorders. I reviewed the Hilltop OBGYN records that I received from her visit with Dr. Andrew on April 26th and Dr. Boyce on July 12th. I reviewed the records from the report from Susan Allen, the deputy coroner, regarding the coroner's report. I reviewed Elizabeth Murray's forensic anthropology report dated September 6th, when she reviewed the remains of Annabelle and gave her report. I reviewed various email communications on September 27th, 28th between Mr. Knippen and Elizabeth Murray and Professor Latham about the forensic pathology. I reviewed a report of, I believe, a gentleman who will be called by the defense, Mark Levon, his report on the forensic pathology of that. And then also, very importantly, I reviewed probably 5 or 6 times at a minimum the interviews with on July 14th between Detective Fain and I believe it's Catherine G.E.E., when they interviewed Skylar on the 14th after they were notified by Dr. Andrews' office of the delivery, and also the interview on July 20th between Detective Fain and Detective Brandy Carter when they interviewed Skylar on the 20th. I reviewed the police report, including the interview with Mr. Trey Johnson, and I interviewed the DNA report that confirmed the parentage of Annabelle. I may have left something out.
As a result of your review of these records, can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what facts support your opinion? Your opinion that Annabelle was born, stillborn.
Okay. Well, you don't care if I go on a while.
You just answer however you have to answer.
Okay. So initially, we know going into the pregnancy that Skylar has a long history of an eating disorder. Her weight had bounced around quite a bit. In February of 2015, there was a little crisis with her eating disorder. She had lost weight. Her friends were worried. They contacted her mother, and her mother took her in to see a specialist at Children's Hospital. At that visit, she weighed 103 pounds and was 5'2", and they ordered her labs, and just because of the vigor of youth, her labs were pretty much normal. But the doctor worked with her, and as they do, and it's my psychiatric rotation at the University of Kentucky was in the inpatient eating disorders unit, and so I can speak to how challenging these problems are with the patients and their families and the doctors, because this can be a fatal disease. And people, I think everybody's heard of Karen Carpenter. She died of anorexia. It's a very serious medical problem. But anyway, that being said, she did well. That was spring of her sophomore year. She did gain weight. She went through junior year. I didn't see much to really talk about during that period of time. And she was ready to start her senior year at Carlisle High School, took a sports physical. And at that physical, she weighed 134 pounds. She had a normal blood pressure. Her physical exam was good. Her weight was back into a normal range, and that exam took place on September 13th. And that's important because it's easy to say that that was her pre-pregnancy weight. And some of this is out of order the way I found it because I'm giving you a chronological order of her pregnancy and not necessarily how I found out the information. But what we do know, due to the interview with Trey Johnson by the detectives and by the DNA results, that 99.9% sure that Trey Johnson was the father of the baby, that sometime between July 24th of 2016 and August 7th of 2016, Skylar and Mr. Johnson were involved in some relationships, as teenagers do, and a pregnancy occurred. And so when the conception occurs at that point, when you're figuring out the date of the pregnancy, you would actually back it up 2 weeks because the pregnancies are calculated from the first day of the last menstrual period, and then you calculate out 40 weeks. As obstetricians, we have a little trick we can do it in our head real quick. It's called Nagel's rule. You subtract 3 months and add 7 days. So the latest she would have conceived is August 7th. If you subtract 2 weeks, the first date of her last menstrual period would have been July 24th. That would give her a due date of June, May, April 24th, May 1st of 2017. So I knew her due date by that information was approximately May 7th, which actually, if you look at the forensic anthropology report of the femur length and the measurements of all the bones when they gave a range of 38 to 40 weeks, the femur length, which is what I use because that's what we use clinically with our ultrasound dating, her femur length was consistent with her conception date, which we knew from Mr. Johnson, confirmed by the DNA, and we knew her pre-pregnancy weight on July 13th of 134. Well, she got busy with her school year. She dropped out of cheerleading. She never saw a doctor for her pregnancy. She was not on any, she was not on any birth control when she got pregnant and had not yet seen an OBGYN and was finishing up her senior year and went in to see Dr. Andrew on April 26, 2017 for what he thought and she thought and everybody thought, but what Skylar was suspicious wasn't for, because Skylar held out some suspicion that she could be pregnant, but she went in, as often the times with his age group, to begin birth control. Dr. Andrew, like we all do, examined her, realized really quickly she was pregnant, realized really quickly she was in the 3rd trimester, and actually did a fundal height measurement at that visit and measured to be 32 centimeters, which a fundal height, just by coincidence, but a fundal height measurement is equal to the weeks of gestation plus or minus 3. So he estimated her to be 32 weeks gestation on April 26th. So it was his belief on April 26th, and it was probably conveyed to Skylar that she was about 32 weeks pregnant. It was too late for her in the state of Ohio to have an abortion. She panicked. She told her, "You can't tell my mother this." Her mother was waiting for her out in the waiting room. She left the office, and Skylar probably thought she had some time to figure out what.
The objection is sustained, ladies and
Okay.
gentlemen. The purpose of this witness is not to provide you with factual information
Okay, I'm sorry.
with regard to what happened. The purpose of this witness is to explain to you what facts he used in reaching his conclusions, and then you are to determine whether or not those facts have been established by direct evidence. So the objection is sustained. Mr. Ritkers, please rephrase. The jury will disregard the last answer.
Well, Your Honor, I would like for him to continue what he relied upon and what were the relevant facts, as the court just pointed out. And that-
He can indicate the things that he relied on and cite that source material, but he is testifying as if they are facts, and they are not.
Well, fair enough, Judge.
All right, go
I
ahead.
can tell you,
I think I understand
All right.
what, and I think I could, so,
let me stop you for 1 second, though, Dr. White. Dr. Andrew came in here at the beginning of this trial and told the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that after he took the fundal height, that he told Skylar that she was going to deliver a baby within 10 weeks. Just, does that help you in any way?
yes, that would be appropriate, given his estimation of her gestational age on April 26th.
Gotcha. So, what other facts did you rely on to come to your opinion that Annabelle was stillborn?
The facts that I relied on to tell me she was stillborn was the description of the delivery in the July 14th interview with Detectives Fain and G, and the description of the deliveries in the interview July 20th between Fain and Brandy Carter. And also what I think I can say, and I'm sure I'll be stopped if I can't, but the 32-week, 32-centimeter fundal height, I had the retrospective ability to know that that was markedly abnormal, because at the 26th week visit, based on the facts we knew, she was not 32 weeks. She was 39 to 39 and a half weeks, which meant that her fundal height at that visit was lagging by 7 centimeters.
If I may have 1 second here. Can I have the police report first? Doctor, this has been already made known to the jury. This is part of Detective Carter's police report, where she talks about the fact that she and Lieutenant Fain went to see Trey Johnson, who we now know as the father. And in her report, she says, may I have a highlighter, please? You got me there. It's, oh, I see what you're doing. So on the, just so the jury isn't confused, I'm using two pages here. On the first page, sorry, it's okay. Starting right here, they are reporting in this report what Trey Johnson said. He stated that they talked and did stuff for about a week in late July or first week of August. And then the next week, she suddenly blocked him on all social media, and he has not spoken to her or seen her since. Okay? Is that a very relevant fact to your opinion that you have given the ladies and gentlemen of the jury today?
Yes, I relied on this information to give me a conception date, and it also corroborated what I knew from Murray's forensic pathology report to allow me to estimate her due date.
So, may I approach? I'm going to hand you, we marked these, but I don't think so. I have to go back to the jury. I'm going to hand you two calendars. One is dated 2016 and the other is dated 2017. If you would, could you, based on Trey Johnson's interview and statements to Detective Carter can you show the jury, using a calendar, how you would come up with the idea that the Annabelle was 39 weeks along when Skylar visited the OB, meaning Dr. Andrew, on April 26th?
Okay. Well, the first week of August, the 1st through the 7th was a Sunday, so that's when I used at the latest that Annabelle would have been conceived. I then went backwards 2 weeks, which would have been July 24th. And there's a lot of ways to do it. You can count in your head, or you can count down the calendar 40 weeks. But the way we do it quickly is we back up 3 months and add 40 days. That's approximately 40 weeks. That would give you June, May, April 24th, or May 1st of 2017. So I knew that the estimated due date was May 1st, which would have been the Monday before she went into labor and delivered. And her visit with Dr. Andrew was on April 26th, which was the week Wednesday before there, about 10 or 11 days before due date. So if she delivered on the 7th and her due date was the 1st, and her visit was the 26th, which was 11 days before she was delivered, that's only 5 days before her due date. So she would have been 39 weeks and 2 days, or we would just approximate 39 weeks when she saw Dr. Andrew.
Dr. White,
Is there a way to get that off? You might have hit something.
I think you cleared it.
Display the picture. It's stuck. It's just stuck. It's not that. That's clear.
My guess is you need to restart the presentation device.
I tried that. The only thing I do is I just go back to reboot the system because I turned it off.
So we turned that off completely?
Yeah, it's off right now. It's stuck in the mixer back there, so I need to reboot the mixer.
Okay, we'll wait.
Okay.
May we approach, Judge?
You may. This out. Ms. Yazel, if you could take the jury, return them to the jury room. Hopefully, this will not be a very long break. You can be seated. Yes, I mean, I'm going to stay here so that I can maybe troubleshoot some of the technical issues, but we're on break. So, doctor, you can step down. At the,
Yeah, it's, okay. Let me shut down.